but why is it so important to identify your perfect prospects before you invest a single dollar?
The biggest mistake, they start with the product. What you should start with is the prospect, the person. Instead of talking about the product and then trying to convince someone to buy it, if you talk directly to the prospect first, they're going to relate to you, you're going to engage them. But to do that, you have to know who they are and what they think. So in one sense, that's not complicated, but in another sense, it is a little difficult.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken Newhouse, and I'm going to welcome you to the Get Clients Now podcast, the show where high-growth consultants and professionals come to access the newest and most effective methods and systems for online marketing, advanced sales and persuasive communication strategies, and automated marketing funnels. And if you're wondering if the Get Clients Now podcast can help you get more high-value clients, enjoy more sales, build a massive tribe, and make more money, you're absolutely going to love this show.
Newhouse's work completely blows everything else that we've ever done with Google out of the water.
I have been looking for a way to grow my presence online, and what I've viewed from Newhouse's work was something that certainly is faster than anything I've seen before.
He says he's going to do something and he does it. He does it in the time frame that he says he's going to do it in. It's exciting when you talk about the results that you're going to get, and you can believe his word because he follows it up with action.
The Newhouse is direct, he's to the point, he tells you what's on his mind, and he backs his words up. From what I know now, from working with him, he's passionate about his work, and he backs it up 100%.
What I like best is you offer something that no one else has out there, which is a pretty comprehensive approach about marketing a system.
If somebody asks me, should they use Newhouse's team? Absolutely, because you're going to get the important information that you need very, very quickly.
On the internet, on the different marketing techniques, I've never experienced anything like this.
I would definitely recommend Ken Newhouse for someone who's serious about growing their business. I think that your results based on the numbers would at least double the sales in a very short time frame.
Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here from funneltribes.com, and I'm going to welcome you back to the Get Clients Now podcast, where the one-size-fits-all marketing model is dumb, the client-centric business model is king, and the sales control system gives you the tools to build your tribe with certainty. This is episode number 322, and on today's show, I'm going to be speaking with one of the world's most famous direct response copywriters on the planet, someone I've been following for a very, very long time, someone that I hold in the highest esteem, and someone that I've been trying very desperately to get on my show for a very long time, and that would be Robert Bly. And we're going to be talking with Bob about his newest best-selling book, The Big Book of Words That Sell, 1,200 words and phrases that every salesperson and marketer should know and use. Now, let me just say this about Bob before I move into his bio. I'm going to get into the interview as quickly as possible. Well, actually, the first thing I want to talk about, a little bit of house cleaning. We're in the process of building a new studio here in my house. And as a result, some of my equipment is being moved around. And what I've realized now that the interview has already been recorded, yes, I've already recorded the show. The interview's already done. And what I realized to my chagrin is that the plug that goes into my microphone was slightly loose. And I talk somewhat close to the windscreen from time to time. And when I bump into the mic, it actually, I guess because the connection was loose, you're going to go from hearing high quality sound to where it sounds like I'm almost like in a bit of an echo chamber. It's not that bad, but it's definitely noticeable. And you're going to be like, what's that? So I'm telling you this so that you can stay focused on the content of what Bob has to say and the questions and the comments that I'm making. It's not that noticeable, but I don't want you to think that maybe something's wrong with your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever. I want you to pay attention to the content because it's really that good. Now, why did I have Bob on the show? Well, Bob has literally written, check this out, guys. He's written over 100 books. Now, all of those books are not books about marketing and helping you sell more stuff, but probably 50 or 60 of them are. And I first learned about Bob and met Bob through mean old Dan Kennedy, who highly, highly recommended that I meet with and purchase and try to invest in as much of Bob's stuff as I could. And as a result, I was actually exposed a long time ago, probably 15 or 16 years ago, through the American Writers and Artists Institute. It's kind of a program where you pay money to learn how to become a really good copywriter. And, Bob's one of the instructors. Bob's contributed greatly to that program. Bob's contributed greatly to the success and profitability and fortune of many, many people. He's right up there with Clayton Makepeace, Gary Benzavinga, mean old Dan Kennedy. The list goes on and on and on. So this guy is super high quality. Now, what I want you to understand is that the book itself was written not just for people who write copy. So what we're going to cover today, you can actually use if you're, as an example, I work with a lot of dentists. So if you're a dentist, let's say you're doing a case presentation or your office manager is doing a case presentation or you're talking about money and you're always looking for a better way, a more magnetic way, a more powerful way that you can say something. You know what you want to say, but you're looking for a better way to say it. Bob has put it over 1,200 words and phrases that you can use so that you have the perfect thing to say to your new patient, to your client, your customer, whatever, your prospects, whether it's face-to-face, nose-to-nose, toes-to-toes, like a live presentation, maybe it's on a video online, maybe it's in the written copy on your website or a blog post, Facebook ads. This is high quality content. And so we're going to be talking about his book and some of the other things that he's done. Bob's generated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from the copy, from words. So today we're going to learn about how to use words to become more persuasive. Not in a way where, there's any kind of chicanery or trickery or shenanigans. We're not talking about that. We're going to learn today about how to use words to actually help you become more successful in your business, help you become more profitable in your business, help you become the most respected, the most sought after, the most in-demand thought leader, brand, professional, expert, you name it, in the marketplace. Words are the way to go. Guys, if you just stop and think about this for a second, think about the power of words. I'm totally captivated by this particular subject, specifically about the power of words. And by that I mean by learning how to master not language so that you could pass a graduate level English class. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how to use words either in spoken or written form or in the form of maybe an audio or video, ads, things like that, to actually be more successful in your business. How do we communicate with others? Well, obviously there's body language, but oftentimes we're not in the room with someone. And so you have to be able to master. If you can master the craft of how to utilize language, how to utilize words, there is no limit to what you can achieve. Literally, there is no limit to what you can achieve, and your success will know no bounds. And it will only be restrained by your desire or lack thereof for what you want to achieve. So now that I've said that, let me just run through Bob's bio very, very quickly. You can learn more about him on his website at bly.com, BLY.com. And Bob's going to be giving away a lot of cool free resources today, guys. And when I say these are valuable resources, make no mistake, I get nothing out of this, and Bob's not getting anything from it as well. This is free stuff he's giving you. And if you're like me, and if you're like my most successful members and clients, you're going to understand that when somebody of this caliber offers you something for free, and in fact, I suggest that you buy his book, and I guarantee his book, which we'll talk about in just a minute. This is high quality content, and everybody who's really successful in business and everybody who's really successful in marketing and writing copy and knowing how to use words to be more successful, to sell more of their services, their products. Even if you're a professional like a dentist, a chiropractor, you name it, the information that Bob is offering you is valuable. So when you get the opportunity to go and download it for free, go and download it for free and study it. Turn off the television, put the smartphone down, put your big boy pants on, put your big girl pants on. The word professional has a meaning. If you really want to be successful, stop whining and complaining. I know most of you don't, but for those of you who do, stop whining and complaining, roll your sleeves up and get to work, okay? And today's episode is all about giving you the tools you need to become more successful than you ever imagined possible, okay? So who is Robert W. Bly? Well, Bob is from Montville, New Jersey. Bob is a professional writer, speaker, and marketing consultant. Bob's got over 3 decades of experience, I think he's closer to 4 now, in business-to-business, high-tech, and direct response marketing. And as I mentioned earlier, this is not his bio that he's given me. I'm just throwing this in real quick. Bob's one of the most successful direct response copywriters of all time. What does that mean? That means he's generated hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars through the use of words, and the words that he's given to his clients either to use in live presentations, in marketing copy, in videos on their website, in Facebook ads as an example, and the list goes on and on. This guy is the real deal, and again, I am just absolutely, I don't know if you can tell, I am stoked, I am thrilled, I am beside myself. This guy's on our show, which is awesome. So Bob's made a lot of money for other people, but something that you probably don't know is that Bob became a self-made multimillionaire at the age of 30, okay? Bob's the author of more, listen to this. Bob has written more than 100 books, and he's been published by the likes of McGraw-Hill, Henry Holt, and Allen and Bacon. And McGraw-Hill calls Bob America's top copywriter. Back in 2007, Bob was named Copywriter of the Year by American Writers and Artists Incorporated. Bob writes a column for Target Marketing Magazine, and the Direct Response Letter, which is Bob's free e-newsletter, has over 60,000 subscribers this year alone. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up his bio. But at the end of the show today, I'm going to be giving you links where you can download some really cool free resources. Again, Bob doesn't need the business. This dude has got so much money. He's dripping money. Okay. The people that are his clients have tons and tons and tons of money. And so again, the fact that I was able to get him on the show with us today, I feel very, very blessed. This guy is an incredibly talented guy. He's a genius as far as I'm concerned. And if you don't know all that much about him, just know this. Dan Kennedy highly, highly recommended Bob Bly and basically referred to him as a blueprint of himself. All right, so now that I've covered the introduction and covered Bob's bio, let's go ahead and dive into part one of the interview with Robert W. Bly, best-selling author of 100 books, but specifically today we're talking about the big book of words that sell. And if you're like me, and if you're like my most successful clients and members, I know you're absolutely going to love the show. All right, let's roll. All right, everybody, I've got Bob Bly on the phone with us today. Bob, as you know, I've just covered your bio in the introduction. And on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. Certainly, this is not only a pleasure for me, but this is a great honor because I hold you in very high regard and high esteem because of the work you've done and what I've been able to learn from you over the years. So thank you so much for me personally and for everybody listening to the show for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's absolutely my pleasure.
All righty, Bob, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first two questions I like to ask, and certainly all the members of the Get Clients Now Nation know this, but I have two standing questions that I love to ask. In fact, I ask all of our guests. And the first question is, if you could, give us a little bit of your backstory. You know, how did you become, and maybe all of our listeners don't know this. I think a lot of them probably do, but some of them I'm sure probably don't. But you're one of the world's greatest, as I mentioned in the introduction, you're one of the world's greatest direct response copywriters, meaning you put words on paper and write words for people to speak that help business owners, be it professionals like dentists or chiropractors or a variety of huge, like Fortune 500 companies, sell a ton of their stuff. And you've also written, I don't know how many books it is, but I know it's a lot because I own a lot of them. Okay, it's 100. I was going to say 90, but that's just insane. But how in the world, and you are a multiple-time best-selling author who's written 100 books, just like you said. How in the world, give us a little backstory how this all came about, if you could, to kind of set the stage for today's call. This is just an amazing feat of 100 books. I mean, it's just incredible.
Sure. My background is a little unusual for a copywriter. I was always interested in science. I wanted to be a scientist. So when I entered college in the 70s, I majored in chemistry. However, I quickly learned that to do well at that career, you have to have a PhD. And which may be hard for dentists to understand or not, I didn't want to be in school that long. So I didn't want to go beyond my 4-year undergraduate. And I realized if I switched to chemical engineering, that you can get a good job in. You don't need a master's or a PhD. So I switched to chemical engineering. When you are a chemical engineering major, the big companies come on campus to interview all the seniors in engineering to hire them. And I was being interviewed, and a couple of companies said, it came out in the conversation that I was the features editor of the college daily newspaper, and I was the editor of the college magazine. I always loved reading and writing. And a couple of recruiters, when they heard that, said, I also have a need to recruit some marketing writers and technical writers and so forth. You would be perfect with your technical background. So not planning that career at all, I interviewed with them, and I got a number of offers. I got a couple of offers to work as an engineer, but 3 or 4 offers to work as what you might call a technical copywriter, a marketing copywriter in-house for companies that had, products they sold to industry or business. And I took one of those and for Westinghouse in 1979, and that's how I started.
That's fascinating. I just find it, and I love to ask that question because you learn so much about people that you would otherwise never really know. I didn't know that about you, but I do think it's fascinating to learn someone's backstory. But having said that, let's go ahead and dive into that second question. And we kind of mentioned this earlier. We talked about this just briefly, but if you had a person or two, an individual or two that were responsible, that kind of helped you out, gave you some direction, some insight, some encouragement to help you become the success you have, I don't think people realize how many people you've actually helped over the course of, so not only the companies that you've helped, but you've taught people how to write copy. But if you could name a person or two and just give us a little bit of that backstory, how they influenced you and helped you to get where you are today, that would be awesome.
I'll condense it. The first person was a copywriter, an elegant gentleman named Sig Rosenblum, who was one of the top direct response copywriters of the 20th century. He's now deceased. And when I was young, I read his articles in Direct Marketing Magazine. I wrote him a letter saying, boy, would there be any opportunity to, apprentice or work with you? And he sent back, no, I don't use apprentices. I write all my copy myself, but I'd love to meet you. And he said, why don't we have lunch at the Plaza, which is a place I would never go to. I was poor and I couldn't afford it. But I'd never been in a place like that. And he met me at the Plaza, and we sat and talked. And usually I eat lunch in 15 minutes. We sat and talked for 3 hours, and we became lifelong friends. Now, he didn't do a lot of direct mentoring with me, but I learned a lot from his stuff and what he did. And years ago, I published, it's still available, an ebook collection of his articles and samples of his work. The second one, and there were several, but the top two was Milt Pierce. I signed up in 1982, I think it was, to take the direct mail copywriting course at New York University. At the time, I lived in Manhattan. And Milt Pierce, who was also one of the top direct response copywriters of the day, I took his course, and him I learned a lot from because he was my teacher, but also he became, like Sig, a lifelong friend, and he passed away more recently. And I also have a book that people can get of his articles and samples of his work. And they are both great people and great copywriters.
Well, I got to tell you, Bob, I've read a lot of your books, probably a half dozen or more. But the book that I'm most interested in talking about today, I think the one that listeners are interested in hearing about today, is the book that's titled The Big Book of Words That Sell. Bob, it is totally fair to say that everybody and anybody who's literally got any experience with marketing and copywriting and being able to successfully produce ads, campaigns, sales presentations, doesn't matter, but who's had success selling things, whether it's online, in print, in copy, in video, doesn't matter. Everybody knows that when they invest in your books and your training courses, that's like literally, how can I say, it's like money in the bank. And so what I'd like to know, Bob, is what was the genesis? What prodded you? What got you going and made you decide to write this book, The Big Book of Words That Sell? Because when you stop and think about it, like you said, you've written 100 books, and obviously these probably are not all about marketing and copywriting, but you've written so many books. And so my question is, I'm thinking to myself, how do you actually create something new and exciting and this relevant and this valuable to those of us who want to actually sell stuff, whether it's, again, in print, in video, audio, live presentations, whatever it is. And again, a caveat, guys, this stuff only works if you put it into action. It's not like Bob's books are like some sort of magic formula where if you just buy this and then leave it sit on your copy table or on your Kindle, that you're going to have tons of new patients coming into your practice, or that you're going to have tons of new clients and customers calling you or buying stuff online. That's not going to happen. You actually have to put this stuff into practice. It's not hard. He's literally giving you the keys to the kingdom here, but you have to actually put this stuff into practice, man. So Bob, considering that you've written so many books, how in the world did you come up with yet another winner?
Well, this book is different than my others. Most of my others that are marketing, of course, I've written many books that have nothing to do with marketing, that are on a wide variety of other subjects. But, in terms of copywriting and marketing, most of my books are strategic or technique. They teach you how to sell. But I also found that because for years I've taught copywriting classes, in-house, on-site copywriting classes at corporations, and Arco Chemical. I did one for the U.S. Army, and often what the students would when they were doing the work would say, "I know what I want to say, but what's the right way to say it?" And it frustrated me because it's been said already. What they wanted to say, experienced copywriter would know exactly what phrase to pull, but a beginning or an intermediate copywriter doesn't. So I said, why don't I put these phrases and words in a book? So instead of having to reinvent the wheel, they can just pick up the book, look at it, and use the phrase that's proven.
All right, Bob, I'm going to hold up right there for just a second before I get to my next question. And people that are listening know that I do this. I don't do it very often, but when something is this good, so when I have a guest on who's got either a book or a training course, whatever it is, a product or service that is quote unquote this good, I'm going to stand behind it. I'm going to guarantee it. I've actually guaranteed someone's $3,000 training before. And here's the guarantee, guys. if you buy this book, if you invest in this book, and it's like $15, but invest in this book, use the material in it, you're going to be able to say that this was worth 100 times, if not 1,000 times, what you paid to invest in the book. And if you can't say that after you've invested in the book and even tried one or two of the strategies in here, if you can't say that this was the best investment that you've made in a book in a very long time, if not ever, I want you to write me an email and tell me, hey, listen, this wasn't as good as you said it was or whatever. And not only will I buy that book from you, you get to keep it, I don't need another copy, but I'll buy that book from you and then I'll replace it with another book of equal or lesser value. And here's the caveat. None of this 50 Shades of Grey garbage or anything like that. It has to be another marketing or copywriting book. This book is that good, if not better. So guys, you want to invest in this book. It's that good. Whether you're someone who's utilizing marketing copy online or offline, whether you're using video sales letters, whether you're a professional like a dentist or a chiropractor, and you're with your patients and you're doing case presentations face-to-face, or maybe with a spouse, this is going to cover every imaginable scenario that can come up in your sales presentation. And if you've been looking for a better way to express something, a better way to get something across, a way in which it's actually going to make you much more magnetic, it's going to make your message resonate that much more with your perfect prospect, your patient, your client, your customer, whoever, whether, again, like I said, it's in written form, could be online copy, could be in, your script for a video, it doesn't matter. Could even be on a podcast like this. This is covered in Bob's book. Again, I've never seen a book like this. I'm surprised he's selling it for $15, but you want to invest in this book. All right, guys, now that I've given you my own commercial for the book, and believe me, that was on my own accord. Bob had nothing to do with that. But now that I've covered all that, I'm ready to dive into the third question, which is, I've become fascinated with this myself, just on a personal level, but I don't think most people realize that words, whether it's the spoken or written word, is an incredibly powerful tool that we can use if we know how to use it to get virtually anything we want in life. I'm really captivated by that whole thought. Whether a person's a Christian or not, if you think about what the Bible says, it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and all things that exist were created by His Word. And, I don't believe in magic with words, but you can use words to actually become very, very successful in any endeavor if you know how to use them. So you mentioned in the book that words are powerful tools that we can use to, persuade ethically, obviously, persuade others so that they're going to end up buying our products and services. Again, that we have quality products and services. But you talked about the secrets to persuading others using words in the book. And can you talk about that for a little bit, about the importance of that? Because I don't know if I'm asking this question correctly, but...
You are. And what interests me most about the question is that in today's era, where we live in a digital multi-channel world, often there are people, consultants and practitioners, normally wet behind the ears and don't really know what they're talking about, that talk about technology as the solution. And the problem with that is, yes, technology, marketing channels, are important, but everyone has access to the same ones. And eventually, everyone learns how to use them. If your competitor puts up a YouTube channel and you say, wow, that's great, I should have done that, you can do it. There's no obstacle. So once you do that, once you take away the competitive advantage of media and strategy, which everyone can duplicate, the only differentiator you're left with is the words on the screen or the page. That's the only leverage you have. That's why copywriting, and of course I'm prejudiced because I'm a copywriter for 4 decades, is one of the, if not the skill that can turn average marketing into very highly profitable marketing.
Okay, so Bob, I'm going to follow up with that. If we want to be actually as persuasive as we can be in our communications with our patients, clients, and customers, and communications, that's kind of a broad statement. Communications could be, hey, I'm talking to this person face-to-face, or I'm talking to this person on the phone, or I'm writing an ad, or I'm writing a pamphlet, or, I'm creating a online video sales letter, or whatever it might be. Or as in my case, I'm on a podcast right now, so words are very powerful in my podcast as well. But if I want to be as persuasive as possible, why is it important to use simple, straightforward language instead of trying to sound ultra versus trying to sound like ultra sophisticated and, being very pretentious in my presentation?
Well, the cliche explanation of what you should do is, and this has been around for decades, you should write or speak to express not to impress. And it was interesting. Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald didn't get along. And F. Scott Fitzgerald said, Hemingway, he writes in these simple words like a baby. It's so unsophisticated. And Hemingway said, Scott thinks I don't know the $10 words. I do, but I prefer to use the simpler $1 words because people understand those. So there's two reasons. A, you have to write to be understood. In fact, Emerson said, it's not enough to write to be understood. You have to write so clearly and simply that you cannot be misunderstood. And secondly, people are attracted to people who speak, like one friend talking to another. They don't like. People think they'll be impressed by complex terminology and so forth, but it doesn't impress people. It bores them and confuses them, and if anything, distances you from them. So that's the reason.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my next question, but let me just say this. We talk a lot about, there's a lot of dentists that listen to the show. There are a lot of chiropractors that listen to the show, over half the audience. And one of the challenges that I have is trying to explain to them, listen, you can't talk to people, specifically your patients or in your marketing copy, whatever. You can't use words that you and I, as doctors, I practice chiropractic. I don't know if you know that or not. I was a chiropractor for 17 years. And then everybody listening knows the story. I was in a head-on collision with a dump truck.
Sorry to hear that. Are you all right?
Well, I was flown by Arch Helicopter to St. Louis University. I was in a coma for 9 days.
Oh, my God.
I've had 18 surgeries since. This was many years ago. I'm not old. I'm 54. But having said that, my clients can talk to me like that because I work specifically with dentists and a few other types of like online business people. But they can't talk to their prospects, their clients, their patients like that because the moment they do that, the moment they talk in a way that's normal for them, it's like they're speaking another language. They lose those people. And so, again, I want to dive into this just a little deeper. Why is it so important to talk in a conversational tone versus the doctor tone or the technical tone, to have those kind of words in our communications, whether they're written or we're actually making a video or we're talking to a live person?
The simple answer and the short answer is people understand, like, and relate to straight talk and plain language. They don't understand, they are intimidated by, and they're often turned off by scientific language, technical language, and big words. I'll give you an example. My father passed away many decades ago, but when he got sick with cancer, we were at the hospital. He had an operation. The doctor came out, and my mother asked how he's, will he be able to go home? And the doctor said to us, he'll never ambulate again. And I thought,
you know what that means.
A-hole, just say he won't be able to walk. What is the reason to say ambulate? It's ridiculous. And that gives you one example of why, it distances you and makes people, people like people who are like them. And your prospects are plain speaking. Interestingly, I wrote a book once called Leadership Secrets of the World's Most Successful CEOs. And I interviewed 100 CEOs of medium to large companies. Some were a little smaller. And what I noticed, this wasn't the subject of the book, everyone, with no exceptions, even the technology companies, spoke in plain, simple English. None of them felt the need to use jargon, big words, complex language. So the idea that you need to impress people, if CEOs speak like you do, no one is impressed by the fact that you say ambulate.
Yeah, that's true. And so, I see that's, again, the reason I brought that up is because I see so many, I don't understand why it's so difficult for some of these people. I don't know if it's because they have a lower sense of self-esteem and so they feel the need to talk above people. A lot of them, this is one of the reasons I really don't enjoy. I've worked with a handful, not all that many, but I've worked with a handful of medical doctors, and I've only worked with one or two that really got this and would talk to their patients on a very conversational level. Most of the other ones talk in a way that doesn't even, people, they have no idea what they're saying. I mean, they have no idea. And the moment you lose someone's focus and attention, specifically if you're trying to sell them something, Bob, I think I might have learned this from you or Dan. I don't even remember, but they're gone. You've lost them. It's over. The moment you bore someone or the moment you lose their focus because you talk in a way that they don't understand you, they're off somewhere else and they're gone. Especially if they're in the office with you. Maybe you're a dentist. You're going over a treatment. You're going over a treatment plan with a patient, and you start talking about their internal and external pterygoid muscles and their masseter muscles and their chewing system and the mesial surface of the teeth or the distal surface of the teeth and occlusion and all these different terms that are very familiar to dentists. You've lost them, just like you say in your book, Bob. You've lost them immediately. And so, like you said, keeping this in a very conversational tone, keeping this very simple, straightforward is probably the best, obviously the best way to go. Bob, what's the name of that book where you interview these people? Because I want to get that book. I don't think I have that book.
Leadership Secrets of the World's Most Successful CEOs.
That's awesome. I'm gonna get
Amazon.
that. I'm an avid reader. I read about 2 books a week. Some weeks, if I'm lucky, I'll get 3 in. But I quit watching television a while ago, and I get excited with new books, and that's I'm kind of geeky like that. But anyway, so let me ask you another question, Bob. Why is it important? Let's talk about identifying your perfect prospects, and you go into detail with some strategies and things in the book that I think are really important. Some of these were actually new to me that I was really impressed with. But why is it so important? And I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but why is it so important to identify your perfect prospects before you invest a single dollar?
The biggest mistake Madison Avenue ad agencies, and they're a dying breed, have been making for years is they write their copy. They start with, a lot of them, they start with the product. What you should start with is the prospect, the person. So instead of talking about the product and then trying to convince someone to buy it, if you talk directly to the prospect, first, they're going to relate to you, you're going to engage them, but to do that, you have to know who they are and what they think. So in one sense, that's not complicated, but in another sense, it is a little difficult because that's why, in your group, so many of your members are dentists, so they understand dental patients. But there are other groups of prospects that if you don't work with them regularly, you wouldn't know what they like, what they care about, what they need, what motivates them. For example, a lot of people don't know this, but if you're selling to coin collectors, you wouldn't know this, but the most common characteristic they have is not that they want to get rich and make money, is they're patriotic. Odd thing, but that's our experience proves that. So you're better off like you guys are in learning and studying a specific industry or market. And the narrower your audience is, yes, the fewer of them there will be, but the more they will buy from you.
So I want to dive into that, Bob, because that's a really relevant topic. And let me give a little preface to that so that it'll make sense in the question. So I just recently I've got a relatively new client now. It's been 4 months, but this is a guy who's doing great work. He's incredibly talented as a dentist. He's very smart. He's very charismatic. He's got a great practice. He's doing a type of dentistry that I wasn't familiar with. It's called biorejuvenation. And I've talked about him on the show a couple times. His name is Dr. Drew Randall down in Dallas, Texas. But one of the strategies that he hadn't really learned yet was how to identify his perfect prospect. So I had him make a list of all of the patients who had actually gone through this biorejuvenation process. And this is an out-of-your-pocket process. This is not a process where, insurance is going to, maybe a little bit, maybe, in dental insurance today, what is that, like $1,000, $1,500 if you got a really good dental plan? Yeah. So for the most part, this is a out-of-pocket investment, I'll say, not an expense. It's an out-of-pocket for the patients, upwards of, $30,000 to $50,000. And so I said, make a list of all these people, and then I want a list of all their commonalities. Well, what he understood me to say was, okay, are they women? What are their age? Where do they live? What's their zip code? I'm like, no, you got to peel the onion back. You got to go a lot deeper, because the more narrowly we can focus our message, Look for the commonalities that these people have. Like, I wanted to know, and tell me your thoughts on this. I wanted to know, like, what do they do for hobbies? How many kids do they have? How long have they been married? What do they do for recreation? What magazines do they read? What are those things to kind of peel back the onion to look at a more deeper level so we could make our marketing message to them a lot more specific, so that our marketing message would weed out it would exclude a lot of people that really might seem to fit in this category, but really don't. But it would become much more magnetic to the people we were trying to attract.
Yeah, one of the questions I ask when I'm doing a copywriting project for a client, and I ask about their market, I say, what is the one problem that your prospects have that are keeping them up at night, unable to sleep, eyes wide open because they're worried?
That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. So you would agree, though, I know you agree because you wrote it in the book, that if people would take the time to get this part of this process correct before they start, their ad dollars would know. I talked to a lot of dentists, and their whole thing is, not a lot. When I say a lot, it's not the majority of them, but it's a good number. They think that marketing online doesn't work for dentists. In fact, a lot of dentists are foolish enough not even to have a website. And I'll just throw a caveat in there. Some of them are on what I call the insurance IV. They only want insurance patients. They want the easy patient that comes in. They don't make very much money. In fact, they work much harder for their money than people who have like a fee-for-service element to their practice. Mm-hmm. But having said that, they don't want a website because they don't want to spend the money, because the insurance company's sending, they're in the book, they're on the registry, they're on the insurance company website. So they get patients, those nickel and dime patients. They got plenty of those. But I'm talking to, there are dentists that actually would love to have higher quality new patients, but for some reason they think that dental, marketing for dentists, otherwise known as dental marketing, doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to a number of offline business owners, brick and mortar companies, if you will. Fabic, which is a Caterpillar dealer here locally in St. Louis. It's one of the largest ones in the country. And talking to them, I've worked with them for a number of years. Initially, their whole thought was, our clientele, the people that buy our heavy equipment, they're not online. They're not the kind of people that we can reach online. Well, yeah, they are. And so it's critically important. I'm looking for your approval or your acknowledgement. We could save a ton of money if we would invest the time, money, and effort in figuring out who our ideal prospects are before we start to market to them.
Yes, and the big companies that have lots of money do this to a fairly well. They commission, which we don't have to, but they commission these hugely expensive market research studies to understand their audience and how it relates to their product or the problem their product solves. And interestingly, if you have a deeper pocket and you're selling things like Caterpillar heavy equipment, there are market research studies that have been published that are more generic that you can buy for $2,000 or $3,000 that really go into the process of buying this type of equipment and the mind of the buyer. So yeah, here's a little. Can I give you a little formula for?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why you're on the show.
I didn't make this up. There's a little formula called BDF. It stands for beliefs, desires, and feelings. It means you want to, you know your group, something about your market, or you wouldn't be selling in business now. You're selling to them. You chose to sell to them. But you want to do a deeper dive and say, what are their beliefs? What do they believe? And write down everything you can think of. Then what are the desires? What do they want? And write that down. And what are their feelings? What are their emotions? To make it a quick story, we were doing this for a company that sells soft skills training to IT professionals. And they sent out a mailer that said, interpersonal skills for IT professionals training seminar. That usually gets a laugh, by the way. But and it got like a 0.5% response. So we just did this analysis. And one thing that we came up with is that IT people and the people they serve in the corporation often have an adversarial relationship. They don't like each other. So I rewrote the mailing, and it pulled 6 times the response of their control mailing. And my headline was, important news for any IT professional who has ever felt like telling a user, quote, go to hell, unquote. And it did 6 times better than interpersonal skills for IT professionals.
All right, guys, with that, we're going to go ahead and stop right there with Bob's interview. We're going to pick back up with part 2 of the interview with one of the world's greatest direct response copywriters. And he's also written, like I said before, 100 books, many of them bestsellers on the topic of copywriting, marketing, selling, and most importantly, how to make money with the words you use in your marketing and your selling, your face-to-face presentations. And in part 2, we're going to dive into a variety of examples that Bob gives you and some of the techniques he's used to literally generate millions and millions of dollars in sales, not only for himself, but for his clients. Now, you can grab some of Bob's free resources if you go to www.bly, that's B as in boy, L as in Larry, Y as in Yankee.com, bly.com/reports. And I believe that's all lowercase, so bly.com/reports. You can also check out Bob's stuff on the homepage of his website, bly.com. And then last but not least, make sure you check out his book on Amazon, The Big Book of Words That Sell. Remember, I'm guaranteeing the book. All right, so we'll see you guys on Monday. If your business is struggling and you can't crack the online marketing code, and you'd like to access the newest and most effective strategies, systems, and tools that are working right now in the trenches, check out the funneltribes.com online community and discover how thousands of consultants and professionals just like you are transforming their businesses, building massive tribes of loyal clients, and making more money.